The Tuesday morning sun, usually a welcome sight, felt like a spotlight exposing a festering wound. I'd woken up with that familiar knot in my stomach, a constant companion these last few months. It wasn't just the work stress or the nagging feeling that I'd forgotten something important. It was the way Jane looked at her phone, the way she flinched when I touched her, the half-truths that had started weaving themselves into her everyday conversations. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was all in my head. Maybe the distance I felt was just the natural ebb and flow of a marriage hitting its 10th year. We were having breakfast, the usual strained dance around each other. She was babbling about some new yoga studio opening downtown, not really looking at me. I was pretending to be interested, stirring my coffee too aggressively. Then the mailman came. A heap of envelopes landed on the counter, mostly bills and junk mail. Except for one. It was a plain white envelope, no return address, and addressed to me in what looked like a messy, hurried scrawl. I picked it up, feeling a strange mixture of curiosity and dread. "Oh, probably just more junk," Jane said, waving her hand dismissively. Her eyes didn't meet mine. The usual dismissiveness, the way she didn't even glance at the envelope, sent a jolt through me. It was too casual, too calculated. My gut, that reliable old friend that had been screaming at me for months, began to howl. I opened it then and there at the breakfast table, tearing it open with a deliberate slowness that was almost painful. Inside was a single photograph. It was a picture of Jane, her face flushed and smiling, kissing another man. Not a casual kiss either. This was a kiss full of intimacy, a kiss that spoke of shared secrets and desires that had nothing to do with me. The world tilted. The clatter of my coffee cup hitting the floor was distant and muffled. Jane froze mid-sentence, her half-formed words hanging in the air like broken glass. Her eyes widened, reflecting the full horror being caught in the act. The color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and drawn, like a ghost. "Junk mail?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, each word sharp and laced with pain that felt physical. I held the photograph in front of her, my hand trembling slightly. The silence in the kitchen was deafening, broken only by the rapid thumping of my heart. Her initial denial crumbled instantly. She tried to say something, a garbled mess of excuses and explanations, but I didn't hear it. All I heard was a deafening roar of betrayal. The image of her intertwined with another man burned into my mind. Years of trust, of love, were reduced to ashes in a single photograph. "Who is he?" I asked. The anger was bubbling just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. It was a physical struggle to control it, to keep my voice steady. She hesitated, her eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape. Then finally she whispered a name, Daniel. The name meant nothing to me. Some guy who'd obviously managed to worm his way into my wife's life. A guy who hadn't considered the devastation he was causing. The fact that he'd been so brazen as to have someone take a picture like that only fueled the anger growing inside of me. "Get out." It wasn't a shout. It was low, guttural, and filled with a quiet rage that even surprised me. She flinched, her eyes filling with tears. "Please," she pleaded, "let me explain." I looked at her, at this woman I'd shared my life with, and felt nothing but a cold, hard emptiness. "You've explained enough," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "Get out before I say something I regret." She gathered a few things, her movements jerky and uncoordinated. I watched her, impassive, as she slammed the door behind her. The silence that followed felt heavier and more oppressive than any argument could have. Over the next few days, I became a man possessed. The anger, one to control burn, transformed into an inferno. I needed to know everything, to tear apart the details of this betrayal like a dog with a bone. I used my connections, the ones I rarely use outside of business. And within days I had a name, an address, and a picture. Daniel wasn't some anonymous face in a photograph. He was a local real estate agent, smug, young, and successful. A walking stereotype of the kind of man Jane had always sneered at. I went to his office. He sat at his desk, his phone in his hand, a bored look on his face that transformed into something akin to fear the moment he saw me walk through the door. "Daniel," I said, my voice low and dangerous, I walked right up to his desk, not letting him say a word. He looked around for help, for some way out, but the rest of the office was empty. He finally managed a weak, nervous smile. "Can I help you?" I didn't answer. Instead, I grabbed his shirt, pulling him across the desk so that we were face to face. My fist connected with his jaw with a force that sent him reeling backward, his chair crashing to the ground. The fight wasn't pretty. It was raw and fueled by an anger that bordered on madness. I landed blow after blow, each punch a release of the pain and betrayal that had been festering inside me. He tried to fight back, but he was no match for my rage. The office became a scene of chaos. Papers scattered, furniture overturned, as I worked him over. Finally, I stepped back, panting, watching him lay on the floor, flat, battered and broken, his nose bleeding, his eyes filled with terror. "Stay away from her," I said, my voice hoarse and trembling with fury. "If I ever see you near her again, I'll finish the job." He whimpered, nodding, his hand reaching up to touch his swollen face. Okay, he mumbled. "Just leave me alone." Leaving him was one thing, but I wasn't done. I thought about this. I knew where Daniel lived. I'd found out when I found his office address. It was an upmarket apartment building. I went there next. I waited outside for hours until he finally arrived back home. When he saw me, he froze, his face paling beneath the bruises. I smiled, and it was a cold, cruel smile. I said I wasn't finished. I watched the color drain from his face as he realized what was coming. I waited as he tried to reach for his phone before taking from his hand and throwing it to the ground, where it shattered into pieces. I didn't want him calling for help. I wanted to work on him. I hit him again and again. I kicked him until he collapsed into a shaking heap. All the while, I told him how I was going to ruin his life. I told him exactly how much he had hurt me. I didn't care if he heard me or not, but I felt compelled to say the words. I wanted him to know why this was happening. Finally, when he looked barely able to breathe, I left. He wasn't the only target. I then turned my attention to Jane. I contacted her family. I contacted her work colleagues. I made sure that everyone she knew, everyone she'd ever come into contact with, knew what she had done. I didn't care about her reputation. I didn't care about the collateral damage. All I cared about was destroying the life that she had so carelessly built on a foundation of lies. It was a week later when Jane turned up at my door, begging for forgiveness. Her eyes were red. She was haggard and worn, and the arrogance that had characterized her for so long was gone. I didn't even feel a flicker of satisfaction. Instead, I just felt empty. I didn't let her in. I told her to go away and never come back. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, of dividing up assets, of untangling our lives. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but the anger had subsided. In its place was a quiet acceptance, a resignation that this was how things were meant to be. I never spoke to Jane again. The path ahead was uncertain, but at least I was walking alone, finally free from the lies and the deceit.